Hi, this is Mateo Mayorga from Five Reasons Sports, and you're listening to Duke Loves Rasslin.
You're locked in.
Look at what we have here, folks!
To the only show that matters.
The cream of the crop.
Duke Loves Rasslin.
And there is no one that does it better than
your host.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass.
The Duke.
And I'm all out of bubblegum.
Brothers and sisters, it is that time again. Our main man, our favorite NBA analyst, Mateo Mayorga, is back here on Duke Loves Rasslin. He has a great update on this exciting basketball season thus far. So without further ado, Mateo, my brother, how you doing, man?
Very happy to be here, Duke. It's been a long time, and we got a lot to discuss. How are you?
I'm fantastic. And you know, this time of year is always special for me because we got the holidays, obviously. So it's just always an action-packed time of year. And of course, with basketball in full swing, it's really cool. It's really cool to have everything going on at the same time. So let's start from the top, man. What the heck is going on with LeBron James right now?
LeBron James, he's gotten older, man. He's approaching 40 years old at the end of this month. He's been playing at a high level since he was really a freshman in high school. He's got so much mileage on him. He should be quickly approaching the league record in minutes. And truthfully, it's just he's playing too much. That's not a pretty good idea for someone at his age. If you recall, Duke, years ago, what Greg Popovich did to preserve Tim Duncan as far back as the 2013-14 season when they won their fifth championship together. Nobody on that starting unit played more than 29.8 minutes per game in that year because the objective was to save their best players for later. And that was an older Tim Duncan. He still played about 2 years after that one at a very high level. And what you need to see for the Lakers to conserve LeBron is to lower his role even more. You know, it was a good idea that they shifted to go with Anthony Davis as the guy, but LeBron James being the second best player of a team should not be the ingredient if you're trying to win anymore because he's done too much and frankly he's wearing himself out. And if he wants to keep playing more seasons, this should not be the idea.
Do you buy into the notion that maybe the coach wasn't the problem with the Lakers last season? I mean, at this stage, Darvin Ham and J.J. Redick, they got the same exact record at this stage in their career as first-year coaches with the Lakers and what have you there. Do you buy into the notion that the coaching wasn't the problem last year, or is that this just a coincidence, but nonetheless, the Lakers made the right move with bringing in J.J. Redick?
Well, coaching wasn't really the entire issue last year, Duke. You have some nice players. You know, Anthony Davis is the guy now. You got LeBron next to him. You got Austin Reeves, who's a very nice player, complementary to them. But frankly, the team is talented, but it's not an elite group. There was only so much Darvin Ham could do. To my understanding, part of the reason why he had to go is because he soured on the players. J.J. Redick isn't some guy who was meant to be, the new Pat Riley, who's going to, be some master motivator and, get them to, totally revamp their offense with X's and O's. Although I do love a lot of his off-ball sets, but truthfully, it was foolish to think that J.J. Redick could come into the Laker organization and have them immediately take off and, be some real strong juggernaut. Of course, like we just mentioned a moment ago, LeBron is good, but he's not the same as he used to be. Anthony Davis is a great player, but, on one of the recent losses that they had, James Worthy was on the post-game show and he was saying that he can't be pretty much the go-to guy. He's someone that fades. So considering all of that, people may have expected too much from year to year with the Lakers right now, Duke.
Yeah, good call. Good call. I mean, Darvin Ham got them far last year.
The year before was the conference finals. The year prior, and last year they got derailed early by Denver. But he did as much as I expected he could do. I never looked at the Lakers as some strong team in comparison to their competition.
Good point. Very good points. Now on the flip side here, something strange is going on with Golden State. They have revamped their team, and somehow, some way, they're one of the top teams in the West, and I don't think anyone expected that. What the heck is going on with Golden State?
Well, they were playing like it for a bit, but they've kind of hit a bit of a rough patch, Duke. They've a little bit of a free fall, losing about 5 in a row, and their last one was against the Denver Nuggets last night. The problem is that Stephen Curry is another one whose age is starting to show, and he didn't get as much minutes late in the game last night because, to my understanding, it's the coaching staff trying to preserve his knees. They have a good team around it, but it's him, Draymond Green, Andrew Wiggins, and a bunch of high quality role players. And frankly, with also Draymond Green missing time because of a calf strain, it's not enough. They don't have enough right now on ball creation to support Stephen Curry. And you got to remember, the best of what Stephen Curry does is off the ball, because when he doesn't have it in his hands, the defense usually loses track of him because they have 10 eyes on the ball, keeping track of someone else. And the moment the ball is given up to Curry, he's put the defense in a very compromising position, because a lot of NBA defenses are so quick to send help. So right now, he has not looked the same. He's looking a little older. His knees has looked a little creaky, and as a result, that affects his jump shot. He hasn't been as accurate as of late, which is not something that should be expected if he is healthy, of course, because he is the top sniper in NBA history. But the Golden State Warriors right now have hit a little bit of a rough patch with health, and they need to do a better job of making Stephen Curry's life easier, and I'm not sure if they're going to be able to do that in the immediate future, Duke.
Wow, that's that's too bad, man. I mean, look, he got his gold medal, so I guess, Steph, you've accomplished it all, brother. It might be time to pack it up. Who knows? Maybe he'll go into broadcasting or something like that. But yeah, Father Time is undefeated, unfortunately, and a lot of these players are learning that. On the flip side, though, we had a big trade this season where the Timberwolves sent Karl Anthony Towns and draft rights to Najee. So we had the Timberwolves, we had the Knicks, we had the Hornets involved in this, but Karl Anthony Towns going to the Knicks in exchange for Julius Randle going to the Timberwolves. I mean, those were the two moves that everybody's eyes perked up like, oh, what's this going to be like? So let's start with Minnesota, because there's a lot going on with this team. There's been a lot of expectations with them. What is going on with the Timberwolves, brother?
Duke, the Timberwolves right now are the biggest disappointment in the NBA. They've won their last 2 games, but against the Clippers and the Lakers, which doesn't mean they're out of the woods yet. But so far, they've been a collection of nice names, but they are not a team. They are emotionally soft, evident by the team publicly complaining about fans booing them in their arena. Unless the fans are directing hardcore profanity or some racism at you, you should probably let it go, because those fans have a lot to be frustrated about, considering how the team has played. Furthermore, Anthony Edwards, at the recent locker room availabilities last week, harped on the fact that the team has gone soft because they can't even talk to each other to try to fix the on-court problems anymore without people getting upset. And that's just a huge problem. You got fragile and insecure players there. And then later that night, The Athletic released some reporting further highlighting how, unfortunate that situation has gotten, while also bringing to attention how guys like Naz Reid, Julius Randle are looking for new deals. Who was also included in the Julius Randle deal to Minnesota was Dante DiVincenzo. He is unhappy with his bench role. It was probably a mistake for him to be playing on the bench. Nonetheless, you have to be better in your role, and this is someone who thought he was better than Mikal Bridges, who is now in New York. Dante DiVincenzo has completely fallen off this year, and on both sides, and it's been a mess for the Minnesota Timberwolves. There's been lack of accountability, and frankly, this is a team that, when you look at their metrics, Duke, their defense is, for the most part, it's doing okay. It's 7th in the league out of 30, which is very good, but its offense is at a mediocre level. But what I've seen, like specifically one of their last losses against the Houston Rockets when they came into town, this was a match that went to overtime. And the key moments of the game, in the crucible, that is where the Minnesota Timberwolves are letting up. And that's just very disconcerting, because I know they got a couple of new players, but some of these guys have already been here a long time. The DNA of the group should be strong enough to not let those things happen. And more on that loss against the Houston Rockets. that night it looked like the Timberwolves lost their dog because it went to overtime. They were down 18 points. They clawed their way back in there, but as soon as the extra time started, their attention to detail and their defensive intensity completely plummeted. And truthfully, this is so disappointing because last year they were the surprise. They were a huge surprise because they made the Western Conference Finals, their first in 20 years. They hadn't gone there since Kevin Garnett, Latrell Sprewell, and Sam Cassell. And when they made the trade, truthfully, there was some financial implications to it, but because they were getting two players back, two good ones for the price of one, giving away Towns to New York, I thought they would be in position to take a step forward. That has not happened, and unless the leaders of the locker room, step forward and nip this situation in the bud, the Minnesota Timberwolves' season won't stretch very long. Right now, we're in December. Before I even realized it, a quarter of the season passed. By the time I finish blinking again, the All-Star break will be done, and by that time, there's not much time to save yourself.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think Edwards is a talented player, talented young player, and I don't want to take anything away from him, but I don't really feel that he's a good leader. And I don't think that he inspires others to be the best versions of themselves. I think that he's domineering and offensive, and therefore, unfortunately, people shut down. And that is not going to work in today's NBA. So, and Edwards, if you're listening, brother, I don't know, man. I think you got to find a better approach. You may want to talk to Tim Duncan and people like that who found ways to get more out of less, quite frankly. You know what I mean? So I think you need to talk to people like that and figure it out. But the way that you're going about it, young man, it's piss poor and it's your fault. You are destroying your teammates. You are ruining their confidence. And you're acting as if it's their fault when it's not. You're just a poor leader. So, everybody doesn't need to be the captain. Sometimes you just can be a talented player, and yeah, you could be the top scorer and all that good stuff, but that doesn't mean that you're the captain. You're not Derek Fisher, brother. You do not motivate well, and it's showing out there. I don't know, Mateo. Am I on to something, or are you thinking wrong there?
Historically, I've never liked it when players air their dirty laundry to the press. It makes for great sound, but a great story to read. But a lot of times when that's over, players are going to be looking around like, "Do you really have my back?" And so, listen, I understand him. Like he is one of the younger guys in the league, although he has not, we're now going on, season 5, but it seems to me like what that was a symptom, a terrible symptom of the situation. Still, it would have been better if he knew better and probably didn't, elaborate so much on what was going on. But one of the things I want to also, harp on, Duke, is, leadership doesn't just come in what you say in the locker room. It's, you got to lead by example. And one of the things I don't like is, sometimes he has a willingness to hold on to the ball too long, to play isolation. Your teammates will get tired of that very quickly. And another thing that I don't think helps his team is him taking way too many threes. Granted, he's making a lot of it, and it's at a career best rate. However, when you're taking that many threes and you are such an athletic freak like Anthony Edwards, you are bailing out defenses by taking those shots. Even if you're making them, they would rather you take it than you actually dribble into the lane and create fouls, because when you put opponents in foul trouble, you limit the potency of the defense because of who has to come onto the court, and you also expose, by coming inside the paint, your teammates more. So I'm not a fan completely of the way he's played this year. I thought he was a better player last year too.
Yeah, and again, he's taken the wrong elements from people like Jordan and even Kobe, where they feel like, those guys are able to motivate their teammates and talk trash and get in their heads psychologically, but that's because they had, the cachet behind them to back it up. They were willing to do whatever it took to win, and I just don't see that in Edwards at all. I just see a prima donna, a person who is a jerk. I don't really, find him to be a pleasant person by any stretch of the imagination. I'm sorry. It's not going to work. You're going to be a loser. You're never going to win a championship. And you're just going to be one of those what ifs because you're blowing your teammates out of the water, bro. You're breaking down who they are from an emotional standpoint, and it's not translating on the court. In fact, it's going the opposite direction. So if you want to be a loser, then keep going the way you're going. But if you want to be a winner, it's time to change it up. And not only that, it's time to start taking leadership direction from a leader, which means the organization needs to actually bring a leader in there, you know. And I don't know who's out there that would even exist. There were no Jason Kidd, Chauncey Billups, Derek Fisher. These guys are not walking through the door anytime soon. Unfortunately, you got a lot of flash and very little substance out there, but look hard, maybe you can find it. You know what I mean? So we'll leave it there. Karl Anthony Towns. I mean, since he's moved on to the Knicks, I don't think he actually wanted to leave Minnesota. They bounced him out of there. What's your take on how that's been for him?
Well, I'm. I think it was a mistake right now to actually trade him. I liked the move when it happened, but the way he has been contributing for the New York Knicks, he's having one of the finest offensive seasons in his career, and it's tough to look at him doing that somewhere else and be satisfied if you are the Minnesota Timberwolves. The one thing I really like about what Karl Anthony Towns has added to the New York Knicks is especially the pick and pop threat with him and Jalen Brunson. Guarding those two-man actions becomes so difficult. If he wants to go to the rim on the roll, or if he wants to pop from the perimeter for an outside shot, it makes it so much harder to cover the New York Knicks, especially when you have to cover someone like Jalen Brunson, who creates so many overreactions on the dribble. Karl Anthony Towns did not want to leave Minnesota, but he ended up in a position that's in a better, and a position that's just as good to showcase his talents, and he's having a great season. He's on his way to an All-NBA selection.
Karl is not that leader either. But what I like about Karl is that he'll put in the work. He'll do what needs to be done out there as long as he feels like people have his back. And that's what I see in New York, and listening to your analysis as well, Mateo. I agree with you. In the beginning, it looked like it was a good trade, but in the end, it's like, no, brother, you guys gave away your best piece, quite frankly. In retrospect, Edwards might be the problem in Minnesota, and maybe if you got rid of him, you'd actually have a team. I know that sounds crazy. You're probably going to lose some ticket sales in the short term, but you're probably going to win more games in the short and longer term when you get rid of somebody who's just acting like a complete jerk. I'm sorry. That's what, in my opinion, that's what the guy is. He needs a change. And look at Towns. Towns doing better than you, I think, says a lot. So, that is what it is. Speaking of young, talented players who seem to have little direction, what's going on with with the Hornets and young man here, LaMelo Ball? I'm seeing a lot of people online saying that he just needs a better team because he can do all these video game, and one basketball moves out there, and it looks cool and it's all flashy. But folks, it's just 3 points. It's just 2 points. I mean, give me a break. You don't get extra points because you cross somebody up. Nonetheless, I mean, I'll give credit where credit's due. Talented young man. Nonetheless, his team they stink. And it's not like he's leading them to smell any better as far as I'm concerned. But I want to hear from an actual expert here. What's your take, Mateo, on LaMelo Ball?
I don't want to completely say he is a looter in a riot, but I'm not a complete fan of the way he plays. Some supporters might just say, well, somebody on the bad team has to get some numbers. He is the one who the opponent is looking to shut down first. There is some truth to that, but I don't think it's the same thing as like when Devin Booker was balling for the Phoenix Suns before they were even a respectable team. It was very clear to see how he was a winning player because of all of the decision making. I am not a fan of LaMelo's decision making. A lot of the times he turns into LeChucker, and also his decision making with passes. He's someone who is around the league leaders in turnovers per game. And when you lose the ball that many times, you're hurting your defense because everybody has to get back quickly, and the opposing team is pretty much scoring against 2-on-1s, 3-on-2s. They have the advantage in those situations. LaMelo is someone who, the best things about him are that he has a super fast first step. He can go wherever he wants, but truthfully, I'm not sure if he's been receiving the right coaching for his NBA career, because he plays the way he wants, and it doesn't look very structured to me. And a lot of the times it looks very unselfishly, the way he can dribble out on the perimeter for extended periods of time and pull up, or how a lot of the possessions will be one pass and done. I know that's the case for most defenses, but when you have someone like him, he should be trying to make sure everybody touches the ball. And he's a at this point, I wouldn't, even considering all his time in the league, he's still a fine prospect to me. But you know, I can't, I'm not really in love with him because he hasn't been as impactful as I have expected in games that I've seen him. And one in particular against the Miami Heat, which Jimmy Butler did not play in late because I think his back was tightening up. You expected more out of LaMelo, especially from his decision making, and that's not there right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think LaMelo Ball might as well go to Ice Cube's Big Three if he wants to just, razzle dazzle and do all that nonsense there. But if you want to win games, young man, you you need to start working on your fundamentals. It's very difficult for me, Mateo, as somebody who grew up in the '80s. And I got to see Larry Bird at his height. I got to see Magic Johnson at his height. I got to see the beginning, the middle, and the end of Michael Jordan and everybody else in between. Dominique Wilkins, Isaiah Thomas. We can go down the list. I got to see all of that. I got to see the evolution of the game. When Timmy Hardaway started doing the killer crossover and how big of a deal that was, I got to witness that. I have a hard time watching these kids carry every single possession. It is so frustrating to see the way that they carry, and LaMelo Ball is the carry king. This young man would not last at any other generation in the NBA because he would just get called for traveling the whole damn time. I mean, am I too old for this game at this point, Mateo?
No, you're not too old. You're just a purist, man. I empathize with you. I've checked out a lot of old Laker tape, especially from Showtime. And there was one possession, I think it was in a game against the Pistons, where Michael Cooper attempted a Euro step and the referee instantly called him for a travel. It's just the game has changed so much. And, I hear all the time a lot how today's players are the most skilled or whatever. It doesn't take a lot of skill to carry the ball. And if that's, primarily what your dribble package is based on. It takes a lot more skill to maneuver wherever you want on the court if your hand is just on top of the ball, like how Jerry West did it, like how Isaiah Thomas did it. As time has gone on, the NBA has loosened up its how they call traveling and carrying, and I think it's really done a disservice because people complain too much how the league has been too offensively focused. And I think if they really crack down on how many carries you see in the league, you would see a lot more exciting basketball, truthfully.
I agree. And quite frankly, people like myself who at this stage are probably the target audience for the NBA. So I'm at that perfect age where you got me as a fan for a long time here. I want to see good basketball. And I find myself just watching the box scores or watching along with the fantasy basketball statistics as they keep getting updated. I don't find myself watching as many games from front to back just because I get so frustrated at the carrying. It's hard to watch because it's terrible. It literally is the worst. You know what I mean? And this is the way that the league has gone. And because of that, the ratings are in the toilet. And I don't think that that's a coincidence. You got to make the game watchable. And the best way to do that is to resist the urge to turn this into a video game. It's not a video game. It's a sport. It's about skill. It's not about playtime. So I don't know. You want playtime, go to your neighborhood rec center or the court down the street. You know what I mean? But when you watch the NBA, you're supposed to see actual fundamentals. I don't understand why we got away from that. It's crazy to me. But anyway, what's going on with the Celtics, man? They're pretty banged up at this point in the year, huh?
Well, in one of their last games, they didn't have a Drew Holiday and Derek White against the Miami Heat, and they're on the injury reports as day to day. They look to be like they're getting their horses back, but the Boston Celtics, Duke, if it's not the Cleveland Cavaliers, the Boston Celtics are the class of the NBA because when I see them whole with Kristaps Porzingis in the lineup, they are a team with super capabilities. The ball movement is very sharp, and a lot of people like to criticize them by saying they take too many threes. The way I see it is they create a bunch of threes with the dribble penetration, the way they sharply move the ball. Jason Tatum is a much better playmaker than a lot of people give him credit for, because when teams try to send two at him to trap him at the baseline, he's actually, he's at 6'8.5", but he's got longer arms than people realize. So it helps him, dissect the double team. And you got someone like Jaylen Brown, a real two-way star, the reigning Finals MVP, who's a very good player moving off the ball. You have a great cast of characters who all complement each other, and they play so much greater together than even what they are. Well, the sum of their parts to make them pretty much like a super team. And right now, they've played the Cavaliers, which is the other top team in the league, twice, and they are 1-1. And Kristaps Porzingis came back for the last one, which was the one they lost. However, it was very encouraging if you're a Celtics fan, even in a loss, how his impact kind of certainly neutralized the impact of the Cleveland Cavaliers bigs, Evan Mobley and Jared Allen. These are some of the two most impactful two-way big men in the league, and Kristaps Porzingis was giving him fits because he, on defense, just takes up space because he's such a large man. The Boston Celtics, they recently just also got back Porzingis this month, but even without him, they were flying high at a high level, and they're going to continue to do that. And they should be expected to be in the hunt for the championship again at year's end because of the strength of their team and riches.
Indeed. I mean, look, I'm a big Joe Mazzulla fan. I love his posture and his focus. I love the way he handles the media. He said to the media, probably a little over a month ago, maybe a month or two ago, there's no pressure. What, pressure from you guys? He's like, look, we're all going to die someday, and none of you are going to be at my funeral. So I don't feel any pressure from you. We just need to do our jobs, and either we go out there and we win, or we go out there and we lose. But there's no pressure from you. It's basketball, and I love that.
My favorite quote that he said this year, he said, "We're not defending a title, we're chasing a title," and that, from what I've seen, the players have taken on this mentality because, naturally everybody tries to give the champions their best shot, but they don't last very long when these guys really have it all together, and they have one of the top records in the league. And I really like what I've seen from Joe Mazzulla. He's really one of the brighter young coaches in the league, and it really shows.
It sure does. And here we go again. When you have proper leadership, look at what happens. You know what I mean? And it's interesting because the Celtics have Jason Tatum, who's the golden boy, and anointed, the big star and what have you. And then Jaylen Brown emerges, who is a leader through and through on every level, high capacity on every level. And that doesn't take away from Jason Tatum's game because he's excellent. But there are intangibles that Jaylen Brown has that are important. You gotta let that guy lead. And it's interesting to see how the Celtics organization and Joe Mazzulla has been able to maintain these two mega stars and allow them the space to be who they are, but at the same time keep them together so that they just complement each other. It's difficult, and eventually they're going to have to split up. But so far, it's working. I mean, what's your take on just having Tatum and having somebody who is just a touch stronger when it comes to leadership? You know what I mean? What's your take on that?
Well, these two are perfect for each other, like Larry Bird and Kevin McHale were back in the '80s. When you look at like the leadership stuff, I'm totally with you. It's Jalen is more of the locker room voice, but these guys are. I'm not sure really if Jaylen Brown gets as much credit as he deserves, because I think he could be the best player on another team, like what Jimmy Butler did going to Miami. I think Jaylen Brown could be the man on his own team and take them very far. But what he's doing, he's sacrificing as a number two guy, and they're eating the fruits of their labor now as champions, and they will probably be in the hunt. Well, they will be in the hunt for it again this season. But truthfully, with the new collective bargaining agreement, it's such a drag because it makes good teams very hard to keep together, especially when you've really maxed out your best players. But if they have the ammo to, or if they have the financial resources to do it, or to even pay those extreme taxes, I would try to keep Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum for as close to for as long as possible, because yes, you're what you're seeing from big men in the league. They are making a comeback, in terms of impact, and how some of the best players now are now big men. But this recipe, how they have the Boston Celtics have two wings who are both two-way players who can take over on offense and defense. They have such a luxury in having them both that when I look around the league, this I don't think anybody else has that, the way the Boston Celtics have it. And it's I'm not saying they're Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen, but that style, like having two wings who can take over the game. That's how they were able to win all those championships, and the way how they've been able to dominate in Boston. I'd want to keep this together as much as possible.
Absolutely, I agree. And you hear guys talk about, Shaquille O'Neal. Unfortunately, he has two different versions of this. He says he should have never left Penny, and he definitely would have won championships in Orlando if he didn't. Um, then he talks about him and Kobe splitting up and how that should have never happened. They would have won more championships. It's true. I think that Tatum and Brown definitely need to stay together. It's not easy because you're managing, again, two megastars. These guys are the class of the NBA. They are top 10 players, no question about it at this stage. So how long can you keep that going? But if you do whatever you got to do, just like you said, if you got the money, pay the luxury tax, keep them together, because Boston is going to be hoisting that championship more often than not for the foreseeable future if you can keep that nucleus. And certainly Joe Mazzulla, give him everything that he wants. Keep that man here, because his posture, the way that he manages that team is so excellent. It is just incredible to even he's a pleasure to hear talk. He's a pleasure to see coach. And I have nothing but praise for him, and kudos to Brad Stevens for being smart enough to realize that Joe Mazzulla was the one to take over, and just he's the guy, and it's worked out and paid off in spades for sure. What else, Mateo? Looking forward here, what should we be on the lookout for as the season continues to progress?
Real quick, I'll get to that in a moment. Can I say something really quickly about Shaq? You piqued my interest about one of his outrageous comments that he just loves to repeat. He has said that he feels he could have won more with Orlando, and he also could have won more with Kobe. Truthfully, I don't think he could have won more with either one of them, because he left the Orlando Magic not because of money. He's been saying that a lot recently, but the real reason, he was totally over everybody in management, and he did not want to be there. After his grandmother, Odessa Chambliss, died, he told the team that he would be away for some time, and almost immediately after, they were breaking his balls, trying to tell him to come back, and Shaq took it as super disrespectful, and they didn't give him time to properly grieve a family member, and at that point they were done. On top of that, the relationship with Penny on the court was phenomenal, but there needs to be more than just the relationship on the court. Most people say, what about Shaq and Kobe? Yeah, but they still had, despite being at serious odds with each other, they still had their moments of bond. By the end of Shaquille's tenure with Orlando, he was very upset how he had advocated for everybody to get paid, but when it was time for him to get paid, Penny had stayed quiet. Now the thing with the Los Angeles Lakers, yeah, him and Kobe had some good moments, and a great story that Jeff Pearlman highlighted in his book Three Ring Circus was that before one game. It was before Game 6 of the 2002 series against the Sacramento Kings, when the Lakers were in serious trouble. Kobe called Shaquille O'Neal at like 2 a.m. and said, "Big fella, I need you." And that was all they said to one another, and they came out like gangbusters the next night. However, the reason why I don't believe they could have lasted any longer or even won anymore is because they hated each other by the time it was done. So when it was so toxic at that point, and let's just say they could have kept it going. Shaq was still in position to be, number one, because when he went to Miami, he was still the top guy. Kobe would have never allowed that with the type of mentality he had in 2003, 2004, 2004, 2005.
Well said. Mateo hitting us with the history lesson. I love it. I love it. Okay, so again, look into your crystal ball there, Mateo. What should we be on the lookout for as the season progresses?
Oh, well, if there are any Heat fans here, I'm not sure they're very thrilled with what's going on with the team. The Miami Heat have a potential to be much better than what they're showing, but they need more out of Bam Adebayo, who has plummeted offensively, and Jimmy Butler has not shown the same RPMs on both sides this year. And it's a real shame, because if those two can crank it up together with what Tyler Hero is doing, the Heat could potentially make things interesting in the playoffs. So there is the situation with Bam Adebayo and the Miami Heat to monitor. Of course, there's also the ascension of the French usurper in San Antonio, Victor Wembanyama. Duke, this guy is really challenging a lot of my basketball philosophies, because he's a freak at 7'4", and he loves to take a lot of outside jump shots. He thinks he's Dirk Nowitzki, minus the post-ups, but recently, not counting, I believe last night, he's been making them at a super high clip. And if he does that, there's really not much more I can say. And he would possibly become, if that type of hot shooting keeps up, he's probably going to be a top 10 player very soon. So you have the emergence of the next best thing in San Antonio. You have, the monitoring the uncertain situation in Miami. Of course, the Knicks are very fun, because last year, truthfully, they were, as an infirmary-ridden group, they put the Indiana Pacers on the brink in 7 games in the Eastern Conference semifinals, and the pieces are gelling very well recently, and I believe they will be a team to really watch out for later on down the road in the Eastern Conference, to possibly challenge the Cleveland Cavaliers and Boston Celtics.
Wow. Got me pumped, man. We got to work together on this, Mateo. If we can get the carrying out of the game, then I think everybody will come back and be able to enjoy the NBA the way that we used to, for sure. Real quick, and I know that this wasn't necessarily on the agenda, but I do want to get your take on this. Angel Reese, she has really leaned into building her brand. She signed the deal with Reese's Pieces, and she has her podcast, so she's able to deliver news and information from her, directly from herself. You don't have to go to anybody else in order to get it, per se, which I think is interesting. She's been really making sure that she diversifies her portfolio outside of basketball. What's your take on that? Do you think that overall that's going to end up being a distraction, or do you applaud the fact that here's a player who is making themselves a real brand, no different from the guys, Jordan, Shaq, et cetera, et cetera? What's your take on how Angel has handled her business thus far?
I'm a fan. All indications have shown from, when you ask around, she is working in the lab. She's appearing in a lot of pictures online and a lot of stuff, and endorsements, because she has a very good group help marketing her and trying to help her and enrich herself. And truthfully, I want to see more out of that type of stuff from, the up and coming WNBA stars. She's always been a hard worker, and already as a rookie, Duke, she was an all-star caliber player. I know she's in the lab, and when she continues to get better, she has the potential to be like a baby Asia Wilson. But I think the people who are criticizing her are doing it a bit unfairly, because what the public usually sees is just the stuff online. They're not really seeing what you're doing for the work.
Damn right. Now, on the flip side, Caitlin Clark, she's been pretty quiet. We haven't really seen her out and about the way that Angel has been out and about, which I find so interesting, that there's such a stark difference between the way the two are presenting themselves to the world. Do you think this is a mistake on Clark's part to not diversify as much as Angel has?
Well, I believe she's one of the highest paid female athletes, at least in America. She has been getting some endorsements. However, the fact that she's not being seen publicly, it kind of reminds me of the conflicting styles between in personality, of course, between like Magic Johnson and Larry Bird. One of them was very much in the limelight for the camera, and the other one was really wasn't didn't really care too much for that stuff. However, if you're seeing less of Caitlin, I really wonder where she could be. That could be scary for the rest of the league.
Well said. As always, Mateo, he comes in with all the great analysis. I love it. Mateo is a student of the game from our great friend Peter Vesey, and it's just really cool to have you on the show, man. We're always honored to hear your takes, hear your analysis, and really get a sense of what we should be paying attention to going forward. It's good stuff there. Mateo, anyone listening out here, if they want to keep up with you and continue to follow what's going on, what's the best way they can do that?
Thank you, sir. You can find me at 5 Reasons Sports on the YouTube page doing a Nuggets podcast on the website with my weekly column. Also, I'm at the King James Gospel for Fansided, writing about the Cleveland Cavaliers, and the last spot at Pounding the Rock. It's an SB Nation site covering the San Antonio Spurs.
Indeed, indeed. Now, listen, before I let you go, we just came off of Thanksgiving, and of course, we have Christmas coming up. So give it to me straight, brother. What are the main dishes on the Mateo Mayorga and family menu there for the holidays?
For Christmas, truthfully, I'm not sure, because my mom kind of led like some movement in the family like in the last 5 years, because she kind of got tired of all the traditional foods, and usually now around the holidays we don't have anything like really planned out until like regarding the meal until like close to that time. For example, at Thanksgiving, she was really digging the idea of a ribeye with lobster mac and cheese with asparagus and some other nice fixins. And I was a fan. It came out delicious. I've had turkey pretty much almost all of my life, so trying new things around the holidays that are not just traditional holiday meals is kind of cool. So I forgive me that I couldn't tell you. So it really depends on what my mother is going to do, because I live in the same town that she lives.
Well, listen, Mom, keep mixing it up. I mean, lobster mac and cheese, you can never go wrong with that. I'm down with. I might have to show up for that. I love a good lobster mac. Listen, my mom, who's originally from Jamaica, although she's been here longer than she was over there, she always adds a little different flavor to things. And my sister, she's a trained chef. So for this Thanksgiving, we had Jamaican oxtail with rice, which is always delicious, especially the gravy. I'm sure you've had oxtail before, Mateo. But then we also had empanadas, and just regular beef empanadas with mixed vegetables and what have you inside. Delicious, legitimately the best empanadas I've ever had in my life. I love the fact that they weren't too spicy. So, that was a departure from quote unquote traditional Thanksgiving food and what have you. And then of course we had we actually had chicken wings. We didn't go for the chicken roast this time, although Christmas we'll do the chicken roast. We're not big on turkey, but we had the chicken wings, and it was all delicious. Pecan pie and apple pie and all that good stuff there. But we traditionally always pull foods from different cultures because we love culture in general. So it's not unusual for us to do like an Asian style ginger duck, or even a fried rice with all Chinese sausage and other types of mixed meats and vegetables in it and what have you. We'll go all the way there, brother. That's how we go. You know what I'm saying? But lobster mac and cheese is not something that's normally on the menu. So again, I may have to make a stop over there and bring my belly, because you got me hungry, brother.
You might have to bring some of those dishes too, of course. But we need you, man.
We'll trade. This is real Thanksgiving. We will trade. Mateo Mayorga, as always, listen, I respect you. I appreciate you, my brother. It is always a pleasure to have you here on Duke Loves Rasslin. And we're getting to the point now where we can reflect back through the years. We've been fortunate enough to be able to, document a good portion of your career the last couple of years. And it's just so cool to be able to do that, because you always bring the heat. And legitimately, everybody listening out there, all of you executives, all of you folks from the big name networks and media houses, Mateo is open for business. So if you have the right deal, definitely reach out to my brother, and I can definitely connect you to him. But if you want this type of quality sports news, not just basketball, Mateo is actually very well-rounded. I think this is somebody you need to tap into, and I'm going to keep banging that drum because I believe it. So there it is. Again, Mateo, appreciate you, brother.
Thank you, sir. I think it's always a pleasure to be here.
Strictly for the culture. Brothers and sisters, you have seen the t-shirts, the hats, the hoodies, the mugs in the hands of some of your favorite pro wrestling stars, podcasters, and influencers out there. And now it's time. Visit strictlyfortheculture.ca and you too can be part of the movement. Bigger than sweatshirts and commercial success, Strictly for the Culture aims to build with like-minded people and elevate their position in the world through knowledge, self-love, and a desire to unite. So what are you waiting on? Visit strictlyfortheculture.ca. Do it for the love. Do it for the knowledge. Most importantly, folks, do it strictly for the culture.
This is Tony Schiavone, and we're desperately out of time on Duke Loves Rasslin.